Hello and welcome. It is great to see so many of you here. If you're in the cafe area, do come on in, sit down, grab a cake, hot drink. It's great to see you. We'll be looking after you for the next hour. My name is Joel.
My name is Priscilla.
And we're really excited for the event we've got coming up. We're going to be looking at the question, will all routes lead to God? Stephen's going to come and speak to us in a minute, and then we'll have a chance for questions after that.
Yes, with all our events, we have a wonderful chance for you guys to ask your questions. So if you go on Slido, and the code is on the screen, perhaps you know it by now, 194972, do be asking your questions, and we'll address those at the end. So Steve, can I invite you up? Steve, I have an interesting question for you. What is the scariest thing you've ever done?
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. My name's Steve, as was just said. The most scary thing I've ever done was a bungee jump. And it was incredible. It's the only time in my life I can remember not being able to control myself from like slightly shaking on the edge. But it was absolutely brilliant, yeah.
Nice.
Amazing.
Anyone else done a bungee jump? Yeah. They're brilliant, aren't they? Yeah. Okay, so let's get into this topic. Once again, thank you for coming to this talk. If it's your first time, you're very welcome. If it's not your first time, you're also very welcome. This week of wonder put on by the Christian Union is a week for you to engage with some of the questions that come up from Christianity, some of the thinking within Christianity. And today we're looking at this question, will all routes lead to God? Now I actually live in Leicester, I don't live in Warwickshire. Anyone else from Leicester?
Yes! Yes!
Okay, one person. Hello sir, you're very welcome. Now Leicester is a brilliant city, do you agree? No, okay. It is incredibly multicultural. It was meant to be the first city in the UK that had a British white minority. Apparently that's not actually a true fact, but it came very, very close. There's no one ethnic group, that means, that is the majority within Leicester. It's incredibly culturally diverse. 30% of the population are British Indian. There are many people that have come over from the Middle East and from Africa and from lots of other nations around the world. And that obviously means as well that it's also very religiously diverse. In fact, the area I live within Leicester is called Spinney Hills. Do you know where that is? All right, and Spinney Hills is even more ethnically diverse than the rest of Leicester. In fact, 80% of the population where I'm from are from an Indian background. And so there's incredible diversity in that area. And I'm part of a church in that area, and I love the area. I love the cultural diversity. I love the religious diversity of that area. Within our church, we do lots of things to reach out to the people in the community, to try and help them in the needs of the area. And one of them is teaching English, so we provide free English classes. And we have about 60 people come in every week who are devout Muslims. We run youth clubs where the majority who come in are Muslim and Hindu, and we have many Sikh people coming in as well. I love it. I love that diversity. But obviously when we look around the world, when we look at places like Leicester and elsewhere in Britain, and we see this diversity in religious ideas, it leads to this question, will all routes lead to God? And I guess there's something in all of us, isn't there, that wants to answer this question by saying, yes, all routes will take us to God. There's a very famous parable that apparently has existed as far back as 500 BC. And I'm going to try and put a picture on so we can see an illustration of that parable. Not quite working. Okay, it's a parable about the elephant and the blind men. Anyone heard or seen this before? And the idea is that there is a group of blind men who are feeling an elephant to try and work out what it is like. And the person who is feeling the tail thinks that it is a rope. The person who's feeling the side of the elephant thinks that it is a wall. The person on the ear thinks it's a fan. The person on the trunk thinks it's a snake. On the legs thinks it's a tree. And on the tusk thinks it's a spear. And of course the idea is that all these different people are feeling at the elephant and they're getting different perspectives on the same thing. Can't we see religion like that? All different views reaching out at the truth. And obviously there's something great about that illustration. And so when we approach this question this afternoon, will all routes lead to God? From my discussions with people on the tables and throughout this week, there's sort of a loaded question behind that question. And it goes something like this. You Christians are claiming that Jesus is the only way to God. How dare you? Isn't it better to think that all routes lead to God? Isn't this the more humble picture? Isn't this the picture that shows the most tolerance? The picture that is the most uniting and inclusive? How dare you think that you can say that Jesus is the only way to God? What an arrogant thing to say. I wonder if you've ever thought that. Well, what I'd like to do this afternoon, just over the next few minutes, is explore and see what this illustration is saying, what it means really if we believe that all routes lead to God. And what I want to try and say is that actually I don't think this view provides the most humble and tolerant and uniting and inclusive view of religions as we see them today. And then at the end I want to maybe suggest a different alternative. So let's start at the beginning. If we can go back, so it just says humble, please, thank you. Is this the most humble view of things? Now in a way it certainly seems it, doesn't it? No one there is claiming to know all the truth. But just look at that illustration there. Because there is one person who is claiming to know the truth in that illustration. Who is it? The artist! Thank you. The person who gives this illustration is actually claiming to know the whole truth. In fact, they're claiming that everyone else is a little bit blind in their pursuit of the truth. And they don't really have the full picture. This is the full picture. So is that really the most humble approach? At first glance we think yes, but when you dig into it, maybe not so much. Is this the most tolerant approach? Now what's interesting here is when we think about what does the word tolerant actually mean. If you Google it and look up the definition, this is what it says. Tolerance is the ability or willingness to tolerate the existence of opinions or behaviour that one disagrees with. So you see, tolerance requires that you disagree with a point of view. Tolerance isn't about saying everyone is right. Tolerance is about having that disagreement and yet showing respect in that disagreement. In fact, it's my experience that this question of humility and tolerance is far less to do with how we answer this question, will all routes lead to God, and far more to do with the approach that we talk about these things with each other. And I have some great Muslim friends, and we have really strong disagreements about what we believe about God and who Jesus was and what's the Word of God. We have great discussions. But he speaks to me, even though he disagrees with me, with a great sense of humility and tolerance, and I too to him. No, it's not about how we answer that question. It's about how we approach the discussion. All right then, is it the more uniting view? Well, as I've just pointed out, when I speak to my friends, my experience is that we can be united despite having disagreement on this issue. In fact, this illustration assumes that the most uniting thing is to say, that all views are right and will lead to God. But just think about that. Is that the most unifying view? I'm a scientist in my day job, and science is all about trying to prove new things or different things from other scientists. Now, what unites me to other scientists isn't the fact that we're all saying the same thing, it's that we all have a pursuit of truth. And my experience when I speak with devout religious people, of whom I am one, is that the thing that is far more uniting is that we have devotion to a God. So actually, I feel far more united to my Muslim friends who are devout in their pursuit of God than I do with my Christian friends who couldn't care less. The uniting thing isn't that we believe the same things, is that we pursue it with a similar passion. So I don't think when you dig deeper that this is actually a unifying view. And the final one, isn't this the more inclusive view? And I guess it certainly seems it from the outside, doesn't it? But just think about this. The major religions in the world will say different things and will claim that they are the right way, certainly for Islam and Christianity. So there are four approaches, given the fact that we have all these different views. We could either say that none of them are right, or we could say that one of them is right, or we could say that maybe some of them are right and some of them are wrong, or we could say that all of them are right. But notice that these views are exclusive of the other views. So if you believe that all the religious views are right, then you are saying it's wrong to think that one is right. In other words, you're excluding the people who think that only one is right, or some are right. And the point here is that actually, whatever view you take on this is going to exclude one view, or two views, and the other views. So in fact, it's not as simple as just thinking all these routes lead to God. This picture isn't as inclusive as maybe it first seems. And this is the final thing I want to ask about this view, because I think this is the actually the most crucial question, and it's this: how rational is this view really? Now, I was just speaking about the differences between Islam and Christianity on the table over there, and we were agreeing there are many overlapping things between the two religions, and there are. The pursuit of God, that Jesus came and had a message for us, that we can live lives that honour Him. All these are shared things, and so many of the things that religious viewpoints say do overlap and can share truths. But then there are also things that the religions claim that contradict the things that other religions say. Let me just give you one example. A claim of Christianity is that Jesus was the only Son of God and that He died for us. Now in Islam, Jesus wasn't the Son of God and He didn't die. And in Hinduism, Jesus was one of maybe many sons of God, and He returned when He died back to that divine source. So these are three things which contradict each other. And of course, it's not rational to hold together contradictory claims. If we can believe things can be contradictory, then it means we can believe everything, and we have to believe everything, because something and not something mean the same thing. So then what does mean anything? So it ends up being irrational to think that these two contradictory or three contradictory claims can say the same thing. And so when I speak to people and they like to point to this sort of an illustration, I think what they are revealing is their desire to have those things, to have humility and tolerance and unity and inclusivity, which is great, and that's a great thing to want. But what I would argue is that there are different positions, and the most respectful thing that we can actually do is honour the different viewpoints, to be able to talk about the disagreements with respect and humility, and to share the commonalities and encourage each other with them. So where do we go from here? Well, I'd like to quickly share an approach that the first believers in Jesus took, which, we can go back one. The approach which the first believers in Jesus took, which was similar to the elephant illustration, but slightly different. And you can read this for yourself. It's in the Bible, in a book called Acts, which is a book about the first people who went out and took the message of Jesus, just after he died and the claim that he rose again. And in that book there's somebody called Paul. And Paul was one of the most profound preachers, the greatest preachers of the Christian message. And he went to Athens, which at the time was the centre of philosophical thought of the day. And he went around and considered and thought all the different philosophies that were seen around and how they contrasted to what he believed about Jesus. And he gave a great speech, which you can read in Acts chapter 17, towards the end of that chapter. You don't have it on your tables in front of you, but you can Google it if you want to read it for yourself. Acts chapter 17. He said this to them. He said, God has marked out everyone's appointed times in history and the boundaries of their lands. God did this so that they would seek him and perhaps reach out and find him, though he is not far from any of us. He was saying to them that, look, no matter where you're from or what your background, you can reach out and you can find God. You can know something about God. And I believe all the religions have some really important things to teach us about God and how we seek after him. Maybe like that elephant illustration, they teach us slightly different aspects, and that is the common theme that humans are reaching up to God to try and find him. But then Paul goes on and says, but now Jesus has come and you can know him for yourself. And he claims this. He said, next part please. He said, God has given proof of Jesus to everyone by raising him from the dead. In other words, Paul was saying there are things we can know about God from all the religions, and it shows that we're seeking him. But Jesus has come and done something, and he's proven who he is by rising from the dead. And so he's saying you can look and examine for yourself the proofs about Jesus. You can explore it for yourself. You can question it. Don't just accept it because somebody's telling you. Dig into it and find out for yourself, because he has given proof that Jesus is who he said he was by raising him from the dead. And look, that is what we are doing this week. We're encouraging you to look and explore and examine for yourselves. You can take one of the portions of the Bible that are on your table home, which are biographies of Jesus' life, and explore that for yourself. Or you can pick some books from the stand at the back. They're completely free. But we want you to look at the evidence for yourself. Examine the claims. There are three central claims that Jesus made and his followers made that are different from any of the other religions of the world. The first is that Jesus was God himself come down. That God has seen us and loved you so much that he's come in the person of Jesus. And in Jesus, God is calling out to you, come and find me for yourself. Now just think, if that was true, if God is trying to reach out to you today in Jesus and you're ignoring it or not even bothering to look into it, Well, what a slap in the face to God that would be. That's the first claim. The second claim that no other religion says is that Jesus had to die on the cross for us. Now, in all the other faiths of the world, there's some system of how we can find forgiveness from God or acceptance from God, and that's great. But in Christianity, and what Jesus said was that he had to die on that cross in order for us to be forgiven. Now, something that is often asked of me is, well, why is that? Surely God can just forgive us without needing to die on the cross. But when you think about it, forgiveness always comes at a cost. I was driving my car a couple of years ago in the streets near I live, and they're very narrow. Yeah, Spinney Hill roads, very narrow, aren't they? And I was driving the car, reverse parking, and I scratched a car that was parked at the side of the road. No! Now, at that point, I was thinking, I could just sneak out now and go away and no one would ever know. But I was with my wife, and she's a better person than me, and she said, Steve, you really need to leave a note on the car. So I left a note on the car, and I said, call this number and we'll sort out. Big scratch on the side of her car. Call this number and I'll cover it. And she sent me a really beautiful message where she said, I was so blown away that you left your number. Thank you for doing that. I'm going to forgive you. I don't think she quite phrased it like that. She said, don't worry about it. Now, isn't that great? She offered me full and free forgiveness, right? Not right. It wasn't free. It was free for me. But it cost her a lot because she had to pay to fix the damage. You see, whenever we forgive, there's a payment, there's a cost to it. And on that cross, what God is saying is, this is the cost of forgiveness. This is the damage that we have done in the world. And so Jesus takes the punishment that we deserve on himself on the cross. And God shows us the cost of forgiveness as he dies. And from it he says, if you come to me, you can know complete forgiveness that's free for you because I've paid it on the cross. So that's the second unique thing that Jesus claimed. He had to die to bring us forgiveness. And the third unique thing is that Jesus and his followers claimed that they saw him risen from the dead. Now that's a crazy claim, isn't it? Physically, actually risen from the dead. But what his followers were saying is, you can look into this yourself. You can explore it. You can speak to the people who saw it. You can examine the evidence for it. And if you were here at the last talk, then you would have heard some of that. And so look, those are three unique things that Christianity says. It's not about what you can do to reach up to God. It's about something that God has done for you. It's a free gift that Jesus has come. He's taken all the punishment so that you can be forgiven. And he was risen again to prove it and to overcome death. And look, I want to encourage you, the most reasonable way to answer this question, will all routes lead to God? It's not just to think, yes, all routes do lead. As we've seen, that doesn't really answer the question or even achieve the things it's aiming at. The most reasonable way to answer this question is the same way we answer any question. To look at the evidence, explore it for ourselves, and then make the decision once we've done that. So you are here this week, and our belief is that God is here trying to speak to you and say, look at this for yourself, seek after me. Will you ignore that? Will you take up the challenge and maybe find the joy of knowing God for yourself? Look, I want to finish with a quote. And this is a quote by someone called C.S. Lewis, who some of you may know. He wrote the Chronicles of Narnia. He was an atheist and then he became a Christian. And he was struck by the challenge of Jesus. And he said this. He was explaining about Jesus, and he says, I am trying here to prevent anyone from saying the really foolish thing that people often say about Jesus. That I'm ready to accept Jesus as a great moral teacher, but I don't accept his claim to be God. That is the one thing we must not say. A man who was merely a man and said the sort of things Jesus said would not be a great moral teacher. He would either be a lunatic, on the level with a man who claimed he was a poached egg, or else be the devil of hell. You must make your choice. Either this man was and is the Son of God, or else a madman, or something worse. You can shut him up for a fool. You can spit at him and kill him as a demon. You can call, or you can fall at his feet and call him Lord and God. But let us not come with any patronizing nonsense about him being a great human teacher. He has not left that open to us. He did not intend to. So look, go and explore for yourself. There's a number of ways you can do that. I've already pointed to the books at the back. Pick up a book, one that takes your fancy, and read it. Or take the book that you see on your table. But another way that you can do that is that you can fill out one of these forms that is on your table, a feedback form. And there's a number of options there called Keep Connected. And there's various levels of things you can ask for there, where someone from the Christian Union will be in touch with you, and if you want to go through part of the Bible or explore this for yourself, you can. Someone will be in touch. But I just want to point out the first option there, Count Me In. Because maybe some of you have explored it, and you've reached that point through this week where you've thought, yeah, I want this. And I believe it. Well, tick that Count Me In, and someone will be in touch with you to talk through how you start that journey with God for yourself. Thank you so much for listening. I'm looking forward to your questions, and feel free to send ones in that are going to trip me up. I'm happy with that. All right, brilliant. Thank you.
Steve, thank you so much, and thank you all for your questions. We've had a lot of them in, and if we can't get to all of them, we're sorry, but we would like you to stick around so we can answer them. We also had a couple that are quite personal, so we'd love to chat with you afterwards about those. So don't be worried if we don't get to those. Do stick around and talk to us.
All right. We've had lots of questions in. We'll start off with, how is this fair in a world where some of us are taught the story of Jesus in school repeatedly, whereas across the world they're lucky to hear his name once?
Thank you. That is a brilliant question, and it was going to be in my talk, and then I didn't have it in the end. In that passage in Acts 17, there's a section of it a little bit later on where Paul says that God has overlooked the lack of knowledge that people had about Jesus. And so there's this idea that God is merciful, and actually he's going to ask us to give account for the light, for the knowledge that we've had. And so I believe that it will be the case that there are people around the world who have never heard about Jesus and yet find forgiveness. But the challenge, of course, isn't for them, it's for us who have heard the message of Jesus. How will we respond? And that's what I was trying to drive at with that second part.
So you talked about looking at the proof for Christianity, but as a scientist, you'll know proof isn't gathering evidence for one theory, but disproving all alternative explanations. And does Christianity do this?
Okay, I don't want to get bogged down into theories of proof. That's a great question, though. What I would say for that is you can explore. Feel free, explore the range of options that are out there. I've done a bit of work of that myself. I've read through the Quran. I've tried to engage with people of the Hindu faith to understand that point of view as well as the sort of three main beliefs in the world. So you can explore all the options. But I think the way that it works in day-to-day life is that if we have enough evidence to convince us that something is true, then we will take that step based on that, even if I haven't explored all the options. Let me just give you one example. My wife is called Rachel. We've been married for about 15 years. Before we got married, we went out for a couple of years, and it got to the point where I had to decide if I wanted to marry her or not. Now, no one gave me the advice, hang on, before you ask her to marry you, you need to look at all the girls in all the world to decide for yourself that they are ruled out before you can say you want her. No, that's not how it works. If I've experienced something with her and in her that I'm confident about, then I can take that step of faith and marry her. And it's similar, I think, with Christianity. If you explore Jesus and you get to that point where you're confident for yourself that this is something you can believe and hold on to, then take that step. And of course, you can keep exploring after you become a Christian or after you trust Jesus. That's always welcome.
Thank you. Next one will go for the one from the Wandering Engineer. It's good to know there's more engineers under the tent. What dimensional being is Jesus? If he is a fourth or fifth dimension, does that mean he can control time?
Wow, what a question! You should write a sci-fi film about that, I think. That'd be great. What dimension? Well, I mean, I'm going to hold up my hands here and say there are many aspects of Jesus that we can't grasp. Now, of course, the belief of Christianity is that Jesus, before he was a human being like us, he was eternally God. Now, of course, we are not going to wrap our head around what it means to be God. It is kind of above us, and we're finite, and the idea of God is that he is infinite. And the belief then is that he becomes a human and enters into this world because God wants to reach out to us. And so I'm not sure about fourth or fifth dimension. Maybe come and speak to me after, we can have some interesting sci-fi chat about that. But the key thing is in Jesus being God come down for us.
Yeah, so you talked about respect and tolerance and humility, but doesn't the church condemn people for their views on things? How does that fit in with tolerance and humility?
That's a great question, and it will allow me just to say that if you have talked to a Christian and you have felt patronised or offended, or you felt like they were arrogant or intolerant towards you, then I don't think they're practicing their faith as they should. And I want to own that as a Christian and say sorry for that experience you've had of that person, because Jesus called us to show that love and respect and acceptance to all people from all backgrounds. That's what he did. That's the example he gave. And so churches should be showing welcome and acceptance for people who have had all sorts of backgrounds and all sorts of experiences. Now, that's not to say, coming back to the main idea, that Christians are going to agree with everything. But it is to say that there should be that attitude of humility, and where that isn't displayed in the church, I think there's a big mistake, there's a big error.
Thanks. Next one's kind of about values. So many religions share common moral values, e.g. to be loving and forgiving. What makes Christianity more privileged or the best, I guess, in that regard?
Okay, great. There's a lot of values that are shared, and in many ways, I feel far more connected to people of other religions than I do to atheists. Sorry if you're an atheist here, because we share this foundational belief that there's a God of ultimate value, of morality, and that there is such a thing as meaning and purpose in life. And that's a great thing to share. But of course, the central claim of Jesus is that he has come down to pay the price for sin for us. So whilst there may be some differences in the values and the morals, that's not the central thing that is the difference between the faiths. The central thing is Jesus' claim that it's through his death and resurrection that we come to God. And like that C.S. Lewis quote, that's a bold claim that you either have to accept or reject. And that's what we want to encourage you to explore this week. So it doesn't primarily lie in the values. Maybe there's some parts of it that do. I won't go into that now. It's primarily about the claim of Jesus and what he came to do.
Thanks, Steve. So if all religions don't lead to God, then how do we know which one, if any, does?
Okay, good. That was the main sort of thrust of the talk, really. And I guess what I was trying to say is the way that we find out which one does is we explore it for ourselves. We don't write it off immediately. The New Testament and the church history is full of people who have explored it, who have challenged it, who have debated about it. And Christianity is a faith that welcomes that. It is not a faith that is asking people to have a blind step of faith. It is asking people to explore for themselves and see the evidence and reach a point and make a decision based on the confidence that you get from that. So explore.
Okay, I think because of time we'll do just one more. We've had one actually saying, do you like agnostics, which was flown up the charts, so you can quickly mention that one. And then to finish off, how does Christianity apply to real life dilemmas?
Okay, I love that question, and let me be clear, I wasn't saying I don't like atheists. So if you're an atheist here, please come and talk to me. You probably don't like me either, but yeah, no, I wasn't saying I don't like atheists, and you know, I love those discussions. Agnosticism, for those who don't know, is the claim that we don't know if there's a God or not, or maybe that we can't know. Maybe I'll just say yes, I do like agnostics, and leave it like that. If you want to talk any more about agnosticism, we can talk about that after. Yeah, and I'd say to you, if you are an agnostic, if you explore all the evidence and the conclusion you reach is we can't know, fair enough. But if you haven't explored the evidence and you're saying we don't know, then how do you know that you don't know unless you look at the evidence? So look at the evidence. And then the follow-up question is, how does Christianity apply to real-life dilemmas? I mean, there's so much stuff that can be said about this. The Bible says, or Jesus says, that he has left his kind of imprint in us, and he's given us his word, and that's what the Bible is. So for a Christian, we will attempt to open up the Bible, understand what it says, understand what God wants and what principles he wants us to live by. And so when we're faced with real life dilemmas, we will approach the Bible to see what it says, or we'll speak to other Christians to see what it says, or we'll pray and ask God to help us and guide us in what decision and what route we should go in. If you have any follow-up on that, feel free to speak to me.
Stu, thank you so much. Thank you for coming to speak to us.